right, welcome to 8.6, slope from 2 points. We just did slope on a graph. So your next thing you're going to do is a quiz, and then we're going to do two-step equations, and then you're almost done with chapter 8. Okay, so we're going to plot the following points and determine the slope like what we did last class. This time we're going to be determining a slope of a line when given 2 points, and determine why do we need to use the formula. Okay, so we have 1, 5, so I'm going to go right 1, up 5, and 4, 2. So right 4, up 2. And then I draw a line through those points. I want to use a straight edge. Okay, so I want to find my rise and my run. So my rise, I go down 1, 2, 3. So it'd be negative 3. And then I run 1, 1, 2, 3. Now I can divide those both by 3. So I'd have negative 3. Oh, just kidding, I'd have negative 1. Over 3 divided by 3 is 1. Anytime I have something over 1, it's just that number, so negative 1. So I want to know, how could I have done this without making a graph? Okay, so a way I could have found that negative 3 is with the rise. The rise is the y's. That is based on our y-axis. So if I had taken my y's, I could have done 5 minus 2. That gives me 3. But if I do 5 minus 2, then to find my run, I'd have to start, because I started with this point, I have to go from this one to this one. So 1 minus 4. And here I would add the opposite. So I have different numbers, so I'd subtract. 4 minus 1 is 3. And I have more negatives, so negative 3. Again, I could divide by 3. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. Negative 3 divided by 3 is negative 1. And that gives me negative 1. So another way of finding distance is by subtracting. So to find the distance here, I could have subtracted 5 minus 2. That gives me 3. To find this distance, I could do 1 minus 4. That gives me that negative 3. So that way it's still negative. Okay, so our main concept is that slope tells us the direction and steepness of a line. To find slope from 2 points, and the 2 points we're going to say x, and then we say 1. So you kind of make a small 1 there. Okay, and then y, 1. Okay, and x2, y2. What this means is that our points always go x, y, and these just ones mean they're from the same point, from the first point. And this x, y just means they're from the second point. Okay, so we compute, we do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so here you go. So number 1 says find the slope of the line through the points. So first thing I'm going to do, and the reason why we wouldn't want to graph this is because 15, negative 7, and 3, 14 would have to be a really big graph to get all the way from 15, negative 7 to 3, 14. We'd have to have a really, really big graph. And that would be really hard to do. You'd have to almost take a whole graph paper to do that. So I'm going to start by labeling it. It always goes x1, y1. So ones have to go together. And then x2, y2. So I'm going to start with the second y. So my second y is 14. So I'm going to do 14 minus my first y. My first y is negative 7. Okay, over my second x is 3 minus my first x, which is 15. Okay, I do want to add the opposite. That's going to make things a little bit easier. If you just type it in your calculator, you can do that too. So I'm going to change this subtracting to adding, and then the opposite of a negative is a positive. So 14 plus 7. They're both positive, so I just add like normal. 14 plus 7 would be 21. Okay, here I would add the opposite, so plus negative 15. So I have a positive and a negative. So I have a positive and a negative, I'd subtract. 15 minus 3 is 12. And I have more negatives, so negative 12. Okay, and then I need to simplify. Is there a number I could divide these both by? I could divide them both by 3. So 21 divided by 3 is 7, and 12 divided by 3 is 4. Now, anytime I have a negative, it's like a helium balloon. It just floats to the top. So we'd say -7 fourths. And that's my answer. Okay. Again, it's okay to use your calculator. Okay, so number 2. We have finding the slope between the lines through the points 26, -2, and 32, -2. Thank you. It's number 2. Okay, so we have x1, y1, and x2, y2. So I'm going to label them x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay, so I have y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So my y2 is -2 minus my y1, which is -2, over my x2. x2 is 32 minus my x1. x1 is 26. Okay, I like to add the opposite, so I would change the subtracting to adding, but that means this negative has to be a positive. So negative plus a positive means I would subtract because they're different. So 2 minus 2 is 0. And then 32 minus 26. I could add the opposite here if I wanted to. I have a positive and a negative, so I would subtract. So 32 minus 26 would be 6. And I have more positives. Now 0 divided by 6, if you use our calculator, if you want to, 0 divided by 6 is 0. Because remember, it's backwards multiplication. What times 6 is 0? 0. So this would be a horizontal line. Just to let you know, because the slope is 0. Okay, number 3 says find the slope of the line through these points. The first thing we do is label our points. So I have x, if it helps to do x, y, x, y. 1's go together, then 2's go together. Sometimes students like to do it that way. Okay, so my y2 is -9. That's the y from the second point, minus my y from the first point, which is -4. x2 means the x from the second point, -19, minus the x from the first point, 17. Okay, now if you remember how to add the opposite, great. If you don't, it's okay to type it in like this, -9 minus -4. What's really important is you have to have that negative in there, okay? And that's going to be -5. Okay? Then I have -19 minus 17. -19 minus 17 is going to be -36. Okay, now when we simplify this one, what's really important to remember is that when I do a negative divided by a negative, my answer is really a positive. So negative divided by a negative is really a positive. So 5 over 36. Okay. If you wanted to add the opposite, you could have. So I have a negative and a positive, so I'd subtract. 9 minus 4 is 5. I have more negatives. Here I could add the opposite. They're both negative, so I would add. I get 36, and it stays negative. Okay, last one. So I have x, y, x, y. 1's go together, so 1, 1, 2, 2. So I'm going to start with my second y. My second y is 22, minus my first y, which is -15, over my second x. My second x is 9, minus my first x, which is 9. So you can use a calculator if you want to, or add the opposite. So 22 plus 15. So 22 plus 15 would give me 37. 9 minus 9 is 0. So this one is different than this one. Here I'm saying 0 divided by 6. So the question is 6 times what is 0? 6 times 0 is 0. Here I'm asking 0 times what is 37? And there's nothing. So if I type in my calculator, so if you're not sure, you can do that, I get undef. That means undefined. Remember how I asked Siri the other day? What's 37 divided by 0?
The answer is definitely undefined.
Okay, so undefined would be my final answer. It's a really fun thing to do is ask Siri, what's 0 divided by 0?
Imagine that you have 0 cookies and you split them evenly among 0 friends. How many cookies does each person get? C. It doesn't make sense. And Cookie Monster is sad that there are no cookies. And you are sad that you have no friends.
Oh, you have no friends. So sad. Okay, anyways. So, to find slope, we need to determine the change in y compared to the change in x. To do this, we use subtraction. So that's why we subtract the y's, and then we subtract the x's. Okay? So, remember, undefined means that you have a number, that's a pound sign that stands for a number, over 0, it's not, or a hashtag sign, I guess, is what we call it now. Okay, 0 means you have 0 on top and a number below. Okay, we used to use the hashtag to signify numbers. Alright, that is it. Good luck on your quiz.